Okay, this is my review for Jujutsu Kaisen, episode 10. Still trying to get back on track. I'm hoping to do episode 11 tomorrow, and gotta fucking do the Burn the Witch for episode 2 as well. Trying to get back on track with this. Before I start reviewing the episode, there was just a thing I had some thoughts on between episodes. So back when Gojo was teaching Itadori a few episodes ago, he remarked to himself that in due time Itadori could perform something akin to a Kamehameha or a Bankai or a Rasengan, because that was the scene I said was funny when Itadori was saying he wanted to use those moves. Gojo said in due time he could do stuff like that. So it seems like a lot like Nana, Hunter, or key techniques in Dragon Ball. Anyone can learn to do anything. You can kind of do whatever you want with your Jujutsu. It just takes time for you to, learn it, learn how to use your cursed energy and then how to manipulate it into whatever it is you want to use it as. Obviously, whatever you have a tendency toward is going to be what you end up doing easily. So, someone like Itadori, who's a very physical person, we saw him punching and stuff in the earlier episodes. He's a brawler. I'm not saying he's a martial artist because we've never been told he knows how to fight. We've just seen him punch and stuff. We know he's physically gifted. Someone like him will obviously take to physical amplifier. Since he throws punches, his curse power is going to come easiest to him throwing punches and something related to that. As opposed to something that would require, say, throwing a cursed thing. He doesn't really do that. He could probably learn that pretty easily, but he's more comfortable punching than he's throwing stuff. If he played baseball or something, he would have a tendency toward that, maybe. An example I wrote down is someone who plays board games would have like a multi-step list of rules to achieve a goal. Kind of like in, to use Hunter x Hunter as an example again, the bandits, whatever the fuck, that Crollo, Lucifer had. How he would have to do like multiple things to get his thing to activate. That's what you would have to do if you were used to using your brain more than punching in Jujutsu Kaisen. If you use your brain and play a lot of board games, you would do something like that. Or how Komugi from playing Gungi against Meruem so much, how she developed a Hatsu to help her play Gungi. If you played something like chess, you would end up developing a jujutsu thing similar to that. If that's like what you were trying to do. If you were trying to do the easiest thing. I'm not saying that's naturally what you would get. But that's what would be easiest for you because that's what you're comfortable with. And so that's a very interesting thing. But yeah. The one thing that I think is anyone can learn any kind of power, which means that anyone can learn Gojo's infinite thing. Or anyone can learn Fushigoro's Shikigami ability. That's at least my interpretation of it so far. I also realized that we haven't heard from Sakura in multiple episodes, and it's kind of disappointing because I really enjoyed hearing Sakura's banter and having him talk with Itadori and stuff. It was fun. So anyways, on to the episode. We open in a high school setting once again. We see Yoshino talking about movies with his friends. Some douchebags show up and they tell him to get out classroom because they use it. Yoshino tries to stand up to them and his friends abandon him, and then they beat the shit out of him. So I would imagine that Yoshino has an issue trusting people, and that he probably also has issues. he probably assumes everyone's going to abandon him because he's been abandoned by so many people in his life. Like the teacher didn't help him, or his friends there. Everyone seems to leave him alone when he's in a bad spot. So he probably doesn't trust anyone. He doesn't feel closely to anyone. And he probably assumes everyone is like that. Everyone's a piece of shit because he's never met anyone that's different. At least until later in this episode, I'm assuming. I mean, I'm assuming that's the thing between him and Itadori. Like, Minnesota will be that Itadori is the difference in the world or something. We cut to Yoshino talking to Mahito, and he's talking about philosophy. He says some quote that fondness is the opposite of indifference, and then he starts talking about how it's a mistranslation. He says that it was translated from love is the opposite of indifference. He basically says that whoever said that should go to hell because leaving someone alone couldn't be worse than being cruel to them or whatever. And I do agree with that view. I think I always had people try to not be assholes to me, but just in general, I've always had people try to approach me and kind of get to know me, and I'd rather just people stick to themselves more so than try to be overly social. And he brings up, of course, the opposite of love should be hate. He says that Japanese people love sayings like that. I don't know enough about that to say. A lot of people love sayings, though, in general in the world. That you always have people quoting other people, and they don't give much thought to what the quote means or why they're saying it. They just say it because they can't think for themselves, and they have nothing to say, so they just think, well, I'll take something that someone else said. It's the kind of people who like skate through life without ever having thought for themselves. I don't like those types of people personally, but that's a personal thing. We get to see Mahito's human curses. He created a big one. He said that his goal was to see how big he could make a curse, and then he wanted to see how small he could make a curse. He made really small ones that look like ginseng roots or like tiny carrots or something. They look like they should be planted in the ground and they'd sprout into a tree or something like that. Yoshino basically says that the goal of every human should aspire to be indifferent. That he wants to be indifferent, meaning he just kind of walk through life not giving a fuck. I understand that. I've been that way toward a lot of things in my life. Just try to be indifferent and just kind of get through so that nothing like comes at you. The issue with that obviously is that while you avoid a lot of negativity, you also potentially miss opportunities and positive experiences. I think in general it's better to do that, to avoid negative experiences, because there's probably more negative opportunities that would await you in the world than positive ones. But that's not always the case. You just got to be able to read the situation and kind of decide, like, what does this opportunity have more potential bad outcomes than good outcomes? That's kind of what you have to look at. Mahito basically starts talking to Yoshino and saying that people have souls and only he can perceive them and he can shape the soul, and souls are shaped by emotions and all this other stuff, and he just kind of goes on this tangent talking about it. And then he says that he wants to free Yoshino of his ties to life and his responsibility. Essentially, he wants him to forget his morals, forget his ethics, forget his emotions, and just live life by impulse. If he wants to do something, then do it. And this is another bit of philosophy. This is actually one I'm very well versed in, because I spent from like the age of 13 to 14 to like 21, 22, really thinking on stuff like that, like responsibilities and emotions and morals and ethics and why people are the way they are. When I was very young, I thought, like, the pinnacle of existence would be to be impulsive and to try to indulge yourself in as much as you can to get as much out of something as possible. But despite that thought, I could never find myself really doing that because it just, something felt wrong, and so I started to try to figure out, why does it feel wrong? And I kind of realized that if you live life that way, just by impulse, just by instincts, just by what you want to do, you kind of are just an animal. You're not really human. The things that makes us human is that we have responsibilities, and we have control. We are aware of our impulses. We know what impulses are. We know what our instincts are. We know the difference between like a necessity and a want. So I kind of determined that living life just by impulses would be like an animal, and that the opposite of that, you know, choosing everything that you do would kind of be make you human. And that's kind of what I use to define humans today. And so, in my view, if Yoshino wanted to live that way by impulse, he would just be an animal. He wouldn't really be a human. He would cease to be human. We learn about, okay, no. We cut to the car, right? Yeah, we cut to the car that Itadori and the other guy are in, following Yoshino. And they have the two curses we saw. This one's called a fly, and the other one is something else. And they're apparently really weak, so weak they don't even rush on the grade scale. They're weaker than grade 4, which is the weakest curses that are graded. And the goal is to release it, to attack Yoshino. If he can perceive it, then they'll know he has cursed energy. If he attacks it, they'll know that he's a cursed energy user. If he doesn't or react to it at all, then they'll know that he doesn't have cursed energy. They'll basically want to know whether or not they need to interrogate him. So they get ready to do that. Well, we get one more little piece of lesson that graded sorcerers are supposed to be higher than the curses that they're fighting that are of the same grade. So a grade 2 sorcerer is stronger than a grade 2 curse, basically. Although that is no longer true when we get to special curses and cursed spirits. At that point, they're essentially equivalent. And then we cut into the sewer, and we see that Nanami's killed a couple curses, and he tells Mahito to come on out. We know that it's coming to the big fight now. And I was getting real excited. Nanami notices that Mahito and Gojo give off similar vibes and that they have similar personalities, likely a similar view on fighting and stuff. It's a great open to the fight. It's pretty fast. It's very fun. Some of the animation and the posing of the characters is kind of awkward, but it's okay because it's just a fun fight and it's fast, and I'm not gonna hold that against it. A lot of fights are like that. It's hard to do, makes something look natural. Mahito tries to block one of Nanami's slashes, and Nanami cuts right through his arm, and Mahito gets confused because he knows he's stronger than Nanami and that he used curse energy to block him, but it went through, so Mahito knows that Nanami's got a pretty strong ability. Nanami takes note that Mahito's talking extremely well, remembering what Gojo said about the special grade curses that he fought that could talk really well. I wrote down that I like seeing two top tier characters fight so early in the show because it knows me that the progression to get to this point, since this is kind of like the pinnacle, will be extremely slow, and that I know what to expect when we get to that pinnacle. It's nice to see the strongest characters go all out. I've already said, like, I really hope to see Gojo go all out. I would hate to never see Gojo go all out and be challenged. before he loses powers or dies. I hate when that happens in a show. You want to, when you know someone's really strong, you want to see everything they got before they die. So I'm glad we're seeing this. We know that Itadori's, if this is as strong or the level of strength Itadori's going to get to, we know this isn't like super high above him, but since it isn't, we know it's going to take a while for him to get to that point. And that we can expect something of this quality, of this caliber fight when he gets to that point. They start talking about philosophy because Mahito is interested in Nanami, and Nanami figures it. He will indulge Mahito to try to learn as much as he can about him to see if they can help him defeat him in any way. So Mahito asks Nanami if he thinks that the soul or the body come first, essentially the chicken or the egg thing. And Nanami says he believes the body would come first and then the soul would come after. Essentially a consciousness view, non-religious view, where you would say like you start out as a cell and you grow, and then when your brain develops you have consciousness and you're aware, and that would be when the soul kind of appears. But Mahito tells him he's wrong, that actually the soul exists first and then the body forms around it, and that's more of a religious view, where your soul would exist kind of in a ethereal plane and then would come to the world. Mahito's power explains his power. It's the ability to manipulate the body around the soul. So as he explained, like the body forms it, the body is shaped by the pull of the soul. But Mahito's power allows him to change that shape. And he explains this as he is like, his arm is getting fixed. And he says it's not regeneration. He's just forcing his body back to the shape it was before he was cut. Or not even before he was cut. He was just forcing it into a shape where his arm was no longer cut. He calls this idol the transfiguration, and he starts growing some curses in his hands to use them, and Nanami says that he's only got 30 minutes left for the fight before he gets into overtime, and he doesn't want to go into overtime. So then Yoshino, we come back to Yoshino, and run into the teacher who ignored his problems, and he assumes that him and the assholes who are beating up were friends. Criticizes them for not going to the funerals and stuff. Yoshino then, kind of is taken aback by this because he knows that they weren't really friends at all. And he starts criticizing the teacher and telling him what a piece of shit he thinks he is. And I somewhat enjoy this because there are teachers that are like that who are just completely unaware of what they make a lot of assumptions, but that's really not just an issue with teachers, it's just an issue with adults, it would seem. I remember being a kid and, adults would just, they assume that because you're a kid and someone else is a kid, you're just going to get along. They don't realize that kids are different, that they're just people and they're different, and not everyone's going to get along, not everyone's going to like the same thing. So I thought that was that's what it made me think of, so I enjoyed that scene. He's ready to kill the teacher, but then Itadori shows up and catches the fly. We get a cut to see that the fly was released too early. Itadori takes note that Yoshino could see the fly. And him catching the fly and falling down stops everything. Yoshino's distracted, so he's not going to kill his teacher. He then goes and pulls the teacher's pants down and takes him to have him run after him to separate the teacher from Yoshino, because he could read Yoshino that he didn't really like him. I don't know if he's aware that he was going to kill him, but he definitely knew he didn't like him, and that he was just in the way anyways. So he kind of invites him to come along, and Yoshino agrees, and then we come back to the fight. Mahito's using, I couldn't tell if it looked like he was using curses to create big flesh things to attack Nanami, but there were some scenes where it looked like he was just doing that to his body. So I couldn't tell if it was both or what. Fuck. It's putting these series of attacks are putting Nanami on the defensive. Mahito's attacking in conjunction with these curses, so it's pretty hard for him to fight. I was actually surprised that Mahito's so good at fighting, because as powerful as he is, you would assume he's been powerful for such a long time, he wouldn't have a lot of practice fighting. Maybe that's just something that the mangaka didn't consider, I don't know, but that was my thoughts. The animation is really good here. I love this so far. It's a really good fight for this series, this newer like anime era of anime, where like the fights aren't the focus like they used to be. I think this is a pretty good fight despite that. There's a curse who kind of asks Nanami to help it, and it starts crying, so we know they're not all brain dead. Mahito admits that even though he's practiced a lot, his idol transfiguration isn't perfect, it doesn't always work. And he really wants to see what's going to happen when he uses it on Nanami. He asks Nanami how powerful he is. Nanami says he's grade 1 sorcerer, so Mahito knows he's pretty powerful. Mahito's having a lot of fun with this fight. He gets serious and seems to blitz Nanami at blinding speed, so it seems like Mahito might have been holding back quite a bit in this fight. But then he reveals he just created hooves and hind legs to be able to dash. He created basically a leg more appropriate for that kind of a thing, just dashing at him. They fight a little more. He touches Nanami, but Nanami blocks himself with his cursed energy. I wrote that down, didn't I? Oh, I thought I wrote that down. Apparently I didn't. Well, Mahito kind of says that most people wouldn't be able to protect their souls with cursed energy, but somehow Nanami did it through instinct. Usually they just protect their bodies and he can get through. But he says that if he hits him just a few more times, he will get through to his soul and be able to manipulate his body and put him under his control. He chases Nanami down, says he won't let him get away. Nanami runs. They have another clash. Nanami like jumps, lands on a rail, and hops off with his hand. And he's holding the thing in his left hand. I'm pretty sure he's had it in his right hand, so I don't know if he's ambidextrous or if he's just switching it because he's that comfortable with it and he's used it that much. I don't know. He looks at time and says that it's 6 o'clock, now he's entering overtime. He takes off his tie, puts his knife away, wraps it around his hand, and then like the cursor injury around his hand goes over his whole body. Mahito notes that his curse energy just shot up. So this seems like the classic shonen sacrificial power akin to the 8 gates in Naruto or Kaioken and Dragon Ball. It's going to be that type of a thing. I'm sure there's going to be drawbacks to this, but I'm really excited to see what's going to happen when he gets into overtime. And then there's a goofy scene at the end where Panda and the characters speak some ingredients of rice balls are wearing Nobara's clothes, and she beats them up, but then she finds out that they're Mei's clothes. And then we see that Gojo had Nobara's clothes, and he showed them off to Itadori, and he thought it was funny because he was wearing them. So some thoughts I have. I hate when they do this with fights where they like split it up between like the fight and then something else going on, because it breaks away from the fight and it takes me out of it. I like to turn watching a fight into like an event. I like to go back to it where I can just watch the fight on episodes. I don't want to have to see other stuff because it takes me out of it. I just want to be enthralled in the fight or absorbed in it, you know. I want to just enjoy it. So I would have much preferred for like one episode to be Itadori and Yoshino and then the other one to be Nanami versus Mahito, just so there's no breaking away. I'm sure there's a reason that they do this. I'm sure this is how it was done in the manga. So I'm not just criticizing the anime with this. It's just a thing I dislike in general with these fights. I think this was started in Naruto. I'm not really sure. That's the first place I can think to have seen it, because Dragon Ball really didn't do it too much, with the exception maybe of the filler in the Frieza saga, where they would cut away a lot. Dragon Ball would always have cutaways to reactions, and even in the canon stuff for the Namek arc, we had a lot of cutting away during the Goku Frieza fight to King Kai, but we still mostly had to focus on that. There wasn't any other story beats going on. It was mostly like 95% of the focus would be on the fights. The Dragon Ball Z filler is a different story, but I'm not going to sit here and criticize it for filler. But, I love Dragon Ball because it always focuses on fights. It's just fight for fight for fight. I can turn it into an event for a day. If I want to rewatch a fight, I can rewatch the fight. I can sit around for a couple hours and appreciate it. I can make some food and watch it and be like a movie. And that's what I enjoy. I like longer fights I can do that with. I don't like the modern era of shonen because, for one thing, the fights are just really short and brief, and a lot of the fight happens off screen. And also we have this issue where they're just constantly like fight, cut away to some bullshit fight. And it's like, come on. Just stitch the fight together and just show us the fight in full, please. Even if it's going to be short, I would just rather it be like that. Naruto didn't necessarily do it poorly, because when they would cut away from one fight, they would usually go to another fight, like the Sound 4 stuff. Like, that's not horrible. The two good fights of the Sound 4, Jirobo and Kidomaru, they were pretty strongly focused on. But once we get to the other two, Udon, Seikon, and Tatsuya, or whatever the woman's name is, they would be interspliced and come back and forth, and then Kidomaru shows up and there's like a three-way focus. I don't like that too much. It was used well there, especially when the three sound ninjas show up, Tamari, Kankuro, and Gaara. That was handled really well. So it isn't the worst example, but I just don't like that. I like more of a focus on just one fight, so I can be really absorbed into it and just enjoy it. So that would be my biggest criticism of this. It's like one of the few times I've actually criticized Jujutsu Kaisen, but that's because I watch anime for the fights. So, if they do something with the fights I don't like, I'm definitely going to come down on that more so than anything else. Yeah. A lot of anime today do it. I'm just not a fan of it. I'd much prefer, if you just like Dragon Ball as an example, think of Yu Hakusho. You don't cut away from fights in Yu Hakusho. Yusuke versus Goro, we just see it all the way through. Lee versus Gaara, we see it all the way through. There's a flashbacks in there, but that's fine. It just adds emotional weight. An example from Naruto that's good. Haku versus Naruto and Sasuke, and then Zabuza versus Kakashi. That's a good example of this, because they're happening in the same place. So it's not like we're cutting from this area all the way over here in the world. We're just like right here, and there's just two different perspectives. That would be a time when it's good to do this. This, though, I would have rather preferred we get Itadori, Yoshino one episode, and then Nanami versus Mahito another. I think that would have been better. But that's my personal preference. Hoping to do the next episode tomorrow, watch it, and then I'll watch it again to review it. We'll see what happens.